G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm XQ. Today I'm joined by Badgers and Ese.
Hello.
How you guys doing
Greetings.
today?
Well,
You're
thanks.
looking very rugged up and making me feel very sweaty in that jumper. That's all I'm going to say, because we're getting really hot down here and it is not pleasant at the moment. So today, earlier today for us, the Q&A came out for the Liberator. So we've actually been talking about this since it came out and going backwards and forwards about many different things. And we thought we'd wait for the Q&A just to confirm some of the things we suspected, and the Q&A did just that. It basically cemented for us what our thoughts were on this. And so we are now ready to go forward and give you our thoughts. At the outset, I'm going to say this straight off the bat, and I think Essay said this as well. I think a lot of people are going to be a little annoyed with what we've got to say. Essay, do you want to put it in your words, what you were saying earlier?
No, I think that summarizes it up. I think it's a ship with a lot of projection and attachment with it.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people were waiting for this and are very sensitive about this ship.
I think to me, I think the CIG marketing kind of oversold it a little bit, as they tend to do, you know. Badges, you got anything you want to add on that? Like the marketing or?
Yeah, there's a hell of a disconnect between what they said in ship talk. So when you listen to the design intent from CitizenCon and the artwork that goes with it, the artwork is a lot of aggressive military stuff, and the intent is not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the potential for people to have been misled with this ship is pretty massive.
Yeah. So I think we'll kind of start. Do you want to? We'll do an overview. Essay, where do you want to kind of start there? Where do you want to kind of take the first bite of this thing from?
Yeah, there's a lot to take on. Let's start with the general of the Q&A. What we suspected and was confirmed, and the things that they've not yet really clarified.
All right, so I'm going to flick us over to the browser real quick. Here we go. So this is the Q&A. What question? We just go from the top?
Yeah, let's do the repair, what is it, hand repair refuel over your arm.
So this I think there was another one on the repairing where they talk about the pads as well. And that, I can believe it or not, they never ever have actually kind of mentioned the way pads are going to kind of fully work. And I think this is the first time we've ever got a hint. And the really cool thing about that, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but that also tells us a lot about repair and the crucible and a few other things. So there's some stuff in here that may come back in future episodes. So just want to bring that up real quick. But yeah, there are some things about the hand repair that they don't kind of really go into either. They don't like what is refueling going to be like? Is that a hose? Or is that a jerry can? But yeah. I've gone off topic. What the hell were we talking about, Essay? Sorry.
Oh, just going over that first point. I mean, to me, the big one that stood out was that one. It was the hand repair is going to take time, and it's minor damage only. Hand rearming. I mean, what is that going to be? Are you going to be first of all, you have to bring your crate of munitions or ordnance up to the deck to load it, and how will it be loaded? And then you get into refueling, like you said. Is it a hose you pull out of the side that you clip into it, or is it jerry cans? I mean, like when we see ships like the Vulcan with drones that are dedicated to this, it makes a lot more sense. You can see how that drone would be able to do that lift to that weight, provide those resources.
So this question here is the one where they talk about, like, can you put bigger ships and stuff on it? And that was, I found really interesting. It was the first time they've kind of talked about the spawning of ships and stuff like that is kind of linked. So yeah. Any other questions here that you wanted to look at before we move on, Badgers?
No, not really. I mean, just to whistle through for those that haven't seen it, it does say that the shields will partially protect what's on the ship, although they're projected from the hull. So if your ship sits above that, exactly like the Kraken will do.
Yeah.
You know, if you're attacked above those shields, then you will be damaged as if you had no shields, unless that ship's got its own switched on. You know, it talks a little bit about ship sizes, which I think they were fairly clear on to the beginning, from the beginning, and then just scrolling down, it's going to have medium/heavy armor to offset its relatively sparse weaponry. The 400 SEU of cargo does not include the garages, so that's just the dedicated cargo space off to one side. And then it talks about a couple of more sort of fringe bits and pieces about, you'll be able to drive vehicles up the closed door to the garage.
We were arguing about this just before the show went live. That's why he's laughing, by the way. Yeah.
Right? And
but
maybe that's the name of the episode right there, but just vehicles everywhere.
So I do like me and I just think it's a valid strategy that you could technically like put tanks up on the landing bay of this and just have it carry all tanks, but they do actually state that it could damage the door, but the ship is still active because you've got the back door. It just means you can't go from the back to the front and then up to the top. So basically you've almost got segmented the ship into two parts.
I'm really looking forward to coming up to a jump gate behind an overloaded Liberator and just dodging vehicles as they fall off the back of this thing, and just kind of like, just vehicle detritus falling off. It's gonna be good fun.
So that's a major talking point with this ship, because I've heard, I was in supporters chat. I forgot who I was talking to, but they were convinced, and it wasn't that, it was the ship discussion, but they were convinced that they could load up 16 tanks onto one of these and land it. And the first thing I thought of was just taking a brick, walking to a balcony, and just dropping it off. Like the people will try some crazy things. We know that. But realistically, what are you going to be able to do with the ship? How is it going to function? It's going to drop a minimal number of tanks. And they talked about vehicle spawning and ship spawning as well, which I thought was interesting. They got into the, you could land a larger ship on it if people fit on those two pads, but you're only going to be able to spawn ships and vehicles of the pad sizes, which I believe were double extra small and extra small.
Yeah.
So, fairly limited.
Despite how long we've known about the Hercules and the fact it's going to fit tanks, this is the first ship that's made me think of the A-Team remake and them flying a tank by firing the cannon. I just see literally just Liberators overhead, and then just this rain of tonks in all sorts of configurations just falling out of the sky.
One other one that I find that was really interesting too is, what is the primary? Wrong one. Where is it? I've lost it. It's the one about the armor. And I've lost where it was. But they talk about the armor of this being medium to heavy, and I've lost it. I can't find it anymore.
Below the first picture, X. Where the
What's the difference in armor?
Firing.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So it talks about the armor here, and it basically says that it's medium heavy. And I've got another thing up here on my other screen talking about how the M2 is heavy. So we've had a lot of debate backwards and forwards about this being a bigger and heavier ship and not having the same VTOL capability of the M2. So I think we've kind of, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but where we kind of came to sit on this ship is it's more of a backliner. So it would drop things off, but it would be at the back of combat. It wouldn't, like where an M2's got a bit more VTOL, so it's got the ability to kind of go. And again, that's not going to be right in the thick of the combat either, but this is definitely a step back from the M2. Is that kind of where we all were sitting on that?
Yeah.
What people will use it for and what it's intended for are two different things. We had that discussion as well, that I think there's a lot of projection onto the ship of what people want it to be. And it, CIG isn't helping, like you said, by the marketing department, doing pictures like that are right there, right? A tonk right off the front firing. But when it comes down to it, is it realistic of how the ship will be used? Probably. There are going to be orgs that just, bring them straight to the front lines and drop their ships.
Yeah.
But then one thing I found really interesting was I wouldn't say the most interesting, but it definitely tells you about how they view this ship, which is, they talk about it being a long range transport, right? And, why is that valuable, moving ships and vehicles over longer ranges? Well, Pyro's coming, and Pyro is nothing but longer ranges. But this ship does not have additional bunks in it.
Yeah.
So it really isn't intended to bring an assault force a long distance, because how are they going to log in and out?
It really does bring it back to that transporter role. And I don't know, for me that, like, and I'm probably giving the game away a bit here, but that for me is where this ship sits. It's not an assault carrier, it's a transporter. And I think the things like the beds missing, they really nail that home. And I've heard people say, oh, well, you can sleep in the beds on the ships, but what if you're transporting 3 Hornets.
Yeah,
There's
or
no beds.
you know, the ships with beds tend to have less capability. You know, they're less fighters, lesser fighters. So you know, you're not going to be bringing your Hornets, your Sabers, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it carries certain benefits. I mean, the massive fuel range means that you could put it in a much shorter ranged assault fleet, and it would go for a very, very long time before you're concerned about refueling it and, you know, it potentially getting left behind. I think the consensus we came to really was that it is considerably undergunned compared to the Hercules. Insert any variant here. And also that it's, I mean, if you look at the image of the tank rolling down the ramp and firing, it's clear that the front extra small pad, whatever's on there needs to clear off. So it's not as efficiently designed as the Hercules is, because, you know, the ramps come down and effectively they can both go off in the same breath. You can have both tanks roll forward and back. You can try and do that with a Liberator, but it means you have to make sure that that front pad is clear or already has what you're rolling off situated on it. People are going to do, I think, some really interesting things with these things and the static guns that we can deploy. Because the walkways down the side, the sheer amount of space you've got on the top deck, you could really go in and deploy some extra firepower with the manpower. And I think, again, like Ese saying, there are confusing bits with the design. When on the front left-hand side, you've got the jump seats for, I think, 16 people.
Yeah, 16.
That doesn't go with the idea of hauling ships.
Yeah.
That's very much a kind of drop capacity sort of thing.
Yeah, and the pilot ready room is the same thing. I mean, why would you go through the effort of putting in a ready room and not have bunks for those pilots? If they're going to spend that much time to justify a ready room, you know, they would be stationed on the ship. And if it had those bunks, even if it only had bunks for the pilot, the ship would make so much more sense.
Yeah,
you know. And
I was just going to say, it's like you know, this is for the vehicles. The people would be more likely to go on the Genesis Starliner.
Yeah, but your pilots would be with their craft. I mean, that's the weird part about the design of this ship. When it comes to not having bunks, I could get the jump seats for the tankers and possibly, I don't even want to bring up the word because it's going to set execute off, but Atlas platform. But
that's right, I'm talking about that at the end of the video. Don't you worry.
Yeah, and to me, what it says is this ship is not an assault craft. I mean, a good example is the M2 has a lot of weapons facing down. You know, the A2 facing down. This has no weapons facing down. Its belly is just open to any hits that you can land on it.
Yeah. And that again leads to that landing craft, like it almost like it's designed to land, and the guns are just there to defend things while it's unloading. They're a bit weird in that way. Like it needs at least one below, you would think, or at least the option to have a remote turret below and above. So as something flies around, you can shoot up or down. You don't have that option.
And it doesn't make, to me, it doesn't make sense that it doesn't have them, because there's plenty of empty space in this ship. Yeah. Like it'd be very easy to add either remote turrets to the bottom or, even man turrets.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. I did have this image up, Ese. Now, you wanted to talk about, someone was saying that they could fit 20 tanks or something on this? They reckon they could carry it?
They figured they could carry about 16 total. And why I wanted to look at this image or share this image was what you see with this is that the interior with the structural ribbing, with the ramps that go down the cargo bay, and the width of, I mean, you can see the width of the tank right there. Could you load in, possibly 4? Yes, you could easily get 4 tanks in there. It would be possibly difficult you might damage the ship, you might damage your tanks, but you could do it. You could definitely get 3. Could you get 6? I mean, I think we're starting to push the limits.
I think you could get 8 if you had 2 on every pad, but then you'd have to have no cargo down the bottom at all. And I do think, you'll damage the doors but
and that's 2 outside of the ship as well.
Yep.
So
so that's 2 on each flight pad, and two in each of the cargo bay pads. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's
I think that'd be
my
your
mind,
upper limit would be 8.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, now, could you do it? Yes, but I mean, you're also putting vehicles in that are not secured, potentially shifting around weight, which we talked about weight with cargo, but there are a lot of things that are unknown. But we do know that logistically trying to get that many tanks in there, it could be done, but it's not going to be ideal. And then when you look at the interior as well, one of the things that I'm wondering is, so we have the Hercules series, we have this. What we don't have is we don't have a transport ship for Titan suits.
Yeah.
We know that they're coming, and in my mind, that's where a ship like this would really excel. The ability to that ramp to come down and a whole bunch of Titan suits to walk off it.
I was going to save this to the end, but since someone jumped the gun, I will talk about that now. Thanks for ruining my fun. But on the very first day that this came out, and I've seen it in a couple other places since, there is basically in the so this is the Liberator page. I don't even know what to call it. The pitch page. If you go down to here where you get to this is an animated thing normally, and if you pause it when it says vehicle bay, it literally says the interior bay accommodates 2 ground vehicles of any size, including exploratory rovers, battle tanks, and Anvil's own Atlas platform chassis. Now, I talked about probably 15 to 20 people, and basically every single person I talked to at first would go, oh, that's the ballista thing, so you can basically change it to be whatever you want it to be or whatever. And then I said, but what happens if I tell you Atlas was a Titan? And then everyone flips and goes, oh shit, it's a Titan. And it would be very Chris Roberts like to name every single Titan after one of the actual Titans. And if you actually go through all the list of the Titans, there's one from everything from medical to repair, whatever. Atlas carried the world on his shoulders, so he could literally be the power loader, essentially. But again, it's just a guess or a speculation, but it's really cool that there's at least something there. And I definitely lean more towards Titan suits than the ballista platform. What about you guys, real quick? Ballista platform or possible Titans?
I go with something. I'm not sold it's Titans. But I'm not sold it's the ballista platform either. I think that would be a very strange naming convention. I think if it would be the ballista platform, that potentially they'd be named a little bit more like weapon systems as opposed to Titans. But yeah, I just think it's because of the whole it's carrying vehicles including. And I'm not sure anyone would go as far as calling it a vehicle, except from a design perspective, which would be in a game design perspective.
Yeah, because I've seen robots called chassis before in other manga and stuff like that, so it depends. But yeah, but it's at least a sign. I think it's possible a sign of Titans, and it's the first sign of Titans we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah. Put it this way, I'd be happy to prove wrong. Sorry.
Yeah. SJ?
What I was going to say was, it's we don't have a delivery system for them. We know they're coming, so it makes sense to me that in their mind, in the back of their mind, they were thinking of this ship when they were designing it. They were thinking of how are we going to deliver this platform? Because, yeah, you might be able to fit them in. We know how tall they're going to be roughly off the art. They're going to be much larger than what a Connie can take, what a Freelancer can take. Then you're really pushing into the Herc ranges, and the Herc would be fine as well. But in my mind, you have 16 jump seats. That's way more than you need for any vehicles.
Yeah.
In any fighters. Really, what you're talking about is you need a maximum on their design notes. You're really only looking at a maximum of, 9?
Yeah.
And yet there's 16. And if you take those 2 pads interior-wise and you break them down into, to a grid-like system to be able to supply those, then I could easily see, 8 Titan suits walking out of this thing.
Yeah. The number of troops to it that those jump seats to the number of planes and vehicles doesn't quite line up always, so it's a little weird. I think the only exception to that I think we worked out was also rovers, if you had
Mm.
like two rovers, because they can hold like almost 10 people between the two of them. So but yeah. And then again, if you and then also then you have to have 2-seater fighters and stuff like that, and that was just to get to 16. There are ways to get to 16, but it's a bit of a stretch. All right, so that's a little tangent for this episode. I think we'll go. Yeah, I think what are we up to now? So let's do some comparisons to a couple other ships. So the M2, the Idris, the Kraken, and the Crucible, and the Endeavour is what we've got written down here. So do you want to kick it off, SA, with the M2?
All right, so obviously we have the M2 in game. We know what it can do. We know how quickly it can load, unload, and what you can fit in it. At this point, you're comparing the two ships. If we're looking at capability, if you want to land tanks or ground forces in atmosphere going down, the M2 is going to be your superior platform for that. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that it's better than the Liberator at delivering vehicles. I'm saying that based off what we currently know of both ships, it's going to be the more effective means of bringing it down, bringing those vehicles down.
Bit more nimble, wouldn't you say? Probably got the maneuverability factor because this is larger.
And more firepower. I mean, it has a lot of the same features, right? Jump seats, there are living quarters on there for the crew. It has a lot of the same features, but it is better armed, equally armored, and has the ability to deliver. I mean, I've fit 3 tanks in it. I wouldn't be surprised if two of these would be just as effective as one Liberator loaded up with extra tanks. So my perspective is right now that the M2 is superior. However, where I would draw the line is that the Liberator is only $55 more. And that's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
To have the ability to have pads for aircraft and just the $55 difference to me just destroys the value of the M2.
So what you're saying there right now is at the moment the Liberator is a very good option just at the moment, but in the final release that may change because of obviously the price jump. It could jump by $100. We don't know, but yeah, with the $55 price difference, I have to kind of agree at the moment. If you are going to buy the ship, now is the time because it is cheaper.
Or at least a CCU.
With that? Would you agree with that, Badgers? Or at least pick up a CCU.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, as you say, it is a very interesting price difference for what are going to be, if they're not already, two wildly different ships in terms of capability, purely because you can launch what you want from this one. And the other interesting thing that I really like about it is, regardless of the number of vehicles that you're carrying, you're not sacrificing SCU. Which I don't think should be overlooked as well. It's quite
a good point. It's actually got like quite a bit of cargo. Actually, I think it's got just slightly less than the M2 itself, which is kind of impressive because it does the ships and vehicles and the cargo, which is kind of impressive. But yeah, I kind of get the feeling, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the M2 seems kind of more like space to planet, and this seems more like planet to planet, like between big large spaces and the transporting of the vehicles, where that is more for the getting them down to the actual planet. I think this is just a bit too cumbersome. It doesn't have the VTOL, but again, a bit of time will tell there. The Idris, I'll let you take this one, Badgers, if you had to compare this ship to the Idris.
I mean, so I'm going to tangent it just quickly. I think the phrase I've said to you guys when we've discussed this multiple times is capacity versus capability. Something having the space is different to something being suited. And like we've said right at the beginning, from the offset, I know the Liberator is going to get used for all sorts of stuff, and it's going to be great to see. Like I said, I can't wait to see nothing but mounted guns on the top deck, and this thing come in and just lay down a terrifying hail of fire. All sorts of. It's going to be great to see. But I think what we've got to remember is, from the outset, the design intent stated on this has been it's a ship hauling platform. It's a shipping ship. It's designed to get stuff from. from A
That's what
to
he
B.
wanted to
So,
call the episode, by the way. The shipping ship. Just want to point that out because we and I was like, it doesn't fit
yeah.
properly, but yeah, it was actually pretty funny.
I
I think for me, while the Idris itself could bring down a vast number of tanks, I don't think it would want to do so in a combat environment at all, and it would be quite far away. And I'd probably put that further back even than this. Yeah, and I'm going to bring the Kraken into this as well, because for me, I think the Kraken would now kind of maybe stay in orbit more, and the ships would fly down from orbit to planet, where this could still relatively, if it wanted to, take the ships down itself. But yeah, I do see a lot of similarities between how the pads work on the Kraken and the pads working on this, but it's only half the Kraken's features. The Kraken's got some other stuff in there, so it is I guess I can see. I've heard people say cheap man's Kraken. I've seen that said. But the other thing I want to put out there as well, really, when it comes to the Kraken, is if this is a light carrier and that's a heavy carrier, where's the medium carrier? So that might be the sweet spot for some people. So I just want to throw that out there. Badgers, do you want to give me your thoughts on the Kraken compared to this?
Yeah, I think it makes sense as the most straightforward comparison, actually, despite how tempted we are to go to the Hercules, because they are moving ships around the verse. The Kraken, what's immediate for me is the Kraken is so much more of a carrier in terms of sustained flying ops. As Essay's already identified, the hand repair, and the hand refuel, the hand rearm, all that stuff, although we don't know precisely what it means, we can take a guess that it means it's going to be the slowest, it's going to be the least efficient, and it's going to be able to deal with the least amount, the least scope of damage. There's going to be a load of different damage types. From a hand repair perspective, you're just going to go, I can't deal with that. I can't fix it. I don't have the tools. So for sustained flying operations, the Liberator's not there. For the quick down and dirty, it's going to be great. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the Kraken's a really fair comparison.
Yeah.
But again, I've got to go back to the original intent. This is ship hauling, and with Pyro coming up, yes, the Kraken, the Idris, the M2, they're all going to be able to do this. But for that one person who's trying to get all of their single fight or seater ships and a couple of ground vehicles from wherever across something as big as Pyro, where they've said, if you're going to do that in a Hornet, that could be 20, even 50 refuel stops.
Yep.
That's where the Liberator is going to excel, and that's where it's going to make some money. And the Kraken too. As a right, you guys who don't have really big ships, who maybe haven't been a backer for long, you've bought the game at outset, at actual launch, with nothing but a starter ship. You've collected some ships along the way. You've got a load of single-seater ones. You found a planet 4 jumps away you want to settle on. Now you've got to get your stuff there. And without a doubt, the Liberator is that perfect balance between the capacity to do that and not having to reach the heady prices that maybe a Kraken would charge because of the protection it can provide and that sort of stuff.
2 things just to add on to what you said there. They did actually state that the Kraken goes much further than the Liberator, and the repair stuff. So we talked about the repair stuff for the Kraken to the Liberator being all by hand, but the Kraken's actually got stuff like actual cranes and stuff. But we don't know exactly what that means, but you can assume that it means it's got better repairing facilities than just the Liberator.
Absolutely.
In the image they show for the Kraken, it's they're replacing a Buccaneer engine using one of those hoists. So, I mean, at minimum, you could take a wing, put a wing back on. You're not going to do that on Liberator.
Yep.
It just isn't going to happen. Major repair, hull repair.
Yep.
I think what we're saying, and just to summarize, is that I think that what we're really getting down to is that the Kraken and the Idris are fleet ships.
Yeah.
They're the support they bring is for a much larger scale type of maneuver or operation.
Yep.
Like I can see a Kraken being a forward operating base with tanks on it going down to planet, but you wouldn't do that to take out a bunker. You're doing that to secure a city, or to take a major enemy out. Same thing with taking these things out in space, the expense of it. Yeah, could it go across Pyro, the Kraken? Sure. But what are you doing? Are you why do you need a ship that large with that many ships on it? It's the right tool for the right job, right? That's really what we're getting down to.
Yeah. No, can't disagree with that. So the last two ships I want to compare it against real quickly, mainly just based on the repair. So we'll do these separately. Is the Crucible, and I think for me the Crucible, like we kind of stated there on the Kraken, you guys can say a longer version if you wish, but I think it's because the Crucible's got those arms, the actual arms for repair. Again, it's just the tools. So is that kind of where you're at, Badgers? Because we make this short and sweet, unless you want to add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but horses for courses, and the Crucible is a very different course.
SA, same for you. The arms on the Crucible set it apart, or is it more than that?
I think there's more than that, really. I mean, so I'm a little biased. It's my favorite ship that I have. I really am looking forward to the Crucible being a game. What the Crucible also brings in, though, is it does have a dedicated space to be able to work on components in the interior. It has that garage.
That's true.
It has the ability.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, they talked about it being a performance hub. I mean, to me, if I wanted either a Crucible or a Liberator to take my racing ships, I'm going to take the Crucible as long as they fit. There is an overlap as far as the repair in my mind, because I think you're right. I think the arms make the repair far superior, but the ability to be a toy hauler, to go racing, whatever it's going to be, you can do it in M2, sure, or C2, but again, hand repair. Liberator, hand repair. Crucible, I can take apart a ship and put it back together pretty much.
All right, and the last ship that we've put here that we want to compare it to, because I found this interesting when SA brought it up, was the Endeavour of all ships. And that mainly, I'll let you take this one, SA, but yeah, it's mainly around the hangar, isn't it?
It is. I was trying to think of, when we were talking about this episode, what ships would be in the same general role as the Liberator, transporting a few other ships and possibly vehicles. Well, the Endeavour, right now, great deal. Buy the Endeavour. It's going to go up in price. $350 right now for it. You add on the $75 hangar module, and then for $425, you have the ability to take, I think it's 2 reds, correct? Is that accurate?
2 Cutlass reds. I'm just going to add there, though, I don't recommend buying modules. Just buy the Endeavour and buy the modules in game. But yeah, I digress. Yeah, $75 for the hangar module. Keep going.
Well, then that's 2 medium pads. So your ability of what ships you can take greatly increases, and it's more potential storage space. Now, can it take ground vehicles down to surface? No. But what do you want to do? Are you looking for a ship to haul around other ships, or are you looking for a ground vehicle? In my mind, I'd rather have an M2 on one side and an Endeavour with a hangar module on the other side than just have the Liberator. But that's just my opinion. I'm
just going to float this out there. Feel free to shoot me down. But if they make a medium carrier, I'd have to assume it's got something to do with medium pads. I'm just going to say that right now. That seems to be where I reckon it would go. So it may carry 2 cutlasses or something like that. But we'll see. We'll wait and see what they do with that medium carrier when it turns up. All right.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, by the way, because we had that discussion where I showed actual ships and what they do in chat, and there's a big gap right there. There's definitely a missing assault carrier of some type, because we know that the UE doesn't use Drake.
Yeah. I'll go out on a limb with this one and say I think it's highly likely that we will get a separate group of carriers. So the Kraken, if it's tier 2 or tier 3 of the stuff that we can buy, say, I think we'll see a separate tier 1 ship. This is tier 1 ship hauling. So I think, we'll likely see something else sit in tier 3 in this category.
Yeah, very, very likely. All right. So under the last kind of thing, what is its real role in the verse? And I think let's go first. Badgers, you went last, so you can go first this time.
I think I've kind of put my coin in here, haven't I? It's going to be whatever people want it to be. It's clearly, though.
What do you?
My perspective, it's a ship hauling ship. As far as I'm concerned, that's where it lands. It's not great at sustained flying operations. So as a light carrier, it's a one-shot light carrier. It's going to be great for landing when people get, kind of creative about it. But again, lacking the ability to really sustain anything over and above the cargo space that it has on board. So I think where this is really going to excel is players who discover that niche of I'm going to help ship newer players or players with much smaller fleets around the verse for a tidy profit, because the amount of cash they'd spend otherwise flying their one ship to the far side of Pyro, creating a beacon back to where the rest of their fleet is, you'd save a lot of money, and yet the Liberator pilots would make a lot of money off that as well. So both sides win.
SA.
I can't disagree with Badgers. I think that that's pretty much its role. I would just say I would probably refine it down to being a tactical transport, only because of its intended use. But to me, this is a step up from the M2. If you, it's a hard thing to say because I think the M2 has more capabilities on ground than this does, or supporting ground efforts. But if I'm looking at what it basically does, this is what the upgrade would be. That would be in between like an A2 and an M2. And for the price at this point, I think this is. I wouldn't say it shouldn't be the nail in the coffin of the M2, but it really does show how overpriced the Hercules series were.
Yeah. Look, for me, I think it is a more vehicle ship focused M2, right? For me, I also think it's very good value at the moment. I think I agree with what you just said there, that the Hercules series is very overpriced. I even said for ages, don't buy the Hercules series if you just want to transport tanks. I think it's partially transport and cargo, right? Well, this does the cargo as well. I just don't think that cargo is meant for that. I think it's more meant for the resupply, the repair, and stuff like that. I think that's what that cargo is for. So you can have ships re-land on this and regather stuff. Someone's mic is hot micing. Anyway, the other thing I want to say is I think this ship tries to do a little bit too much of too many different things. So basically, it's doing the ships and it's doing vehicles. I would have liked to have the option to do 5 ships or 5 tanks, not the mix of both. It really does bring it back to that transporter role that Badgers is talking about. I don't think like if you think about combat scenarios, you're more likely to want to take in 5 ships or 5 tanks, but not a mixture of both. There will be situations where you do want to do a mixture of both, but not as much as the one or the other, so to speak. And then I think again, the fact that the lack of beds, that does not add to that long range thing for me at all. And it just makes it a little difficult.
I mean, if anything, it hurts that range.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Drinkers, you're hot micing, by the way. Yeah, I think I'll kind of wrap it up there. Is there anything that you guys want to add, like in summary, so to speak?
I would just say, if you are looking, so it's a unique opportunity hull right now. If you are looking to get a much more expensive ship at a better price, highly recommend grabbing a CCU to this, because it's likely going to jump $75 to $100 when it does come out. And
Agreed.
based on the picture that we showed with the items in the garage and the Hornet on top, it seems like they're much further along in development with this ship. And I think that it is, it just, if you look at the geometry, what's art and what is computer rendered, it looks like they're much further along in this ship than I think we anticipate.
Again, when they tend to have people in the screenshots, and some of the people in the screenshot is art, but in some of the other ones it's rendered as well, it does feel a little bit further along than it should be. I wish I had the image up, but maybe it's on the Q&A, but it's probably not. The one where, no, they don't have it. It's the one where they're in the cargo, some of the shots are more polished than other shots, essentially, and that just kind of makes it, what SA's saying makes sense. It just feels more polished and further along than most ships are.
Well, even the detail in the image there, I mean, if you look at just the vent details on the side,
yep.
They look very, very refined, very clean angles.
Yep. All right. I don't know why you're hot micing, Drinkers, but you're hot micing real bad. That's all right. We'll wrap it up. Do you want to add something, Drinkers?
No, I think we've covered everything with it. I think I'm just going to go with a kind of motivational poster style. You know, you don't have to quantify why you want it. If you want it, you want it, and that's the end of that conversation. But yeah, I think it's really interesting in terms of just how flexible it's going to be, and I can't wait to see the crazy stuff people will do with it.
I think for me, if you wanted that pocket carrier, though, I still think that the medium carrier, because we know, like, it literally says on the page light carrier, and the Kraken is listed as the heavy carrier, so there is definitely at least another one coming. And I think the medium one will probably be the sweet spot for most people, and I've said that about a lot of ships. The medium ones are going to be the more popular because they scale up and down, not just in one direction. So for me, I don't have a place for it in my fleet personally, but I can see a lot of people really liking it, and I know a lot of people that have already brought it. I just find it a little bit a jack of all trades, and that's not always the best thing to be. But, you know, I do very much want to fly it, though. I have a very thing for flying weird ships, and being able to fly this off the front to one side, I find very interested. So I am looking forward to that. Let me know in the comments below about my little thing about the Atlas and the Titan suits. Also, let us know your thoughts on this ship specifically, and if there are any other roles or things that you think that we haven't mentioned here that this would be good at. Like I've heard some weird things, like someone was saying to me it'd make a really good hospital with Cutlass Reds on it, but I don't quite see that myself. But, you know, just some weird roles that I've heard some people throw out about this. And what was it, 16 tanks? Like, I just don't think that's going to be possible either. But, you know, I'm sure people will try. And I've seen photos already of people like trying to line up arrows on the roof and all that, and they got like a ridiculous number of arrows on it. So there will be people, we've seen people do that with the C2s as well, like parking Merlins inside it and stuff like that. So while it may be possible, it's probably not suggested, recommended usage cases. We'll leave it at that. Is there anything you guys would like to hear in the comments from people?
Yeah, I just want to tag on to that. Yeah, a lot of people were looking forward to the whole series, or the Hercules series, because they wanted to use it as a small carrier, like a pocket carrier. I think this is that. So I'd love to hear what people's plans are for how they're going to run something like this.
Yep. And if I'll add on that as well, if you did have a Hercules, did you upgrade from it to this? I think that's a really good, because I think a lot of people are going to do that. Like I remember, like there was an argument me and Paul had for about 2 hours when we were doing the top tier lists, and I kept saying the Hercules is garbage, and he kept saying, but it carries tanks, and that's what I remember. I might have remembered it wrong, not to chuck Paul under the bus, but that was what I remembered. And now this is out, I'd like to get his thoughts. So I might have to sit down with him and see what he thinks of it. All right, then. He's been Badgers. He's been Ese. I've been Execute. And we'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one. You can say goodbye, guys. Or you can just leave me hanging. That works too.
What do you mean, peace? I'm already out.